You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick, both inside and outside of the music business.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. My guest today, Q Robinson, is known for his work with Bobby Brown, Peabo Bryson, and Avery Sunshine, but also for his work drumming for big musical productions, such as his current spot as the drummer in the touring production of Hamilton. We are going to talk about all of these things, as well as gain some valuable insight into how Q got to be where he is at now, and he gives some really great advice. So come along with me as I catch up with Q Robinson. Q, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to see you.
Likewise, I feel like COVID is taking years off of all of our lives, and we haven't been able to do the typical NAMM hangs or the PASIC hangs, although I really hate that I didn't get a chance to go to PASIC this year. So,
oh my gosh, I've been hearing from so many people. Actually, through the whole PASIC, Aaron Spears was texting me going, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. Why am I not there? So,
yeah.
But
man, it was tough.
Yeah. Right? I think a lot of this year in particular, for some reason, it got more visibility than in past years, and it's been really great. The feedback's been great. So I think like next year is going to be huge. I
think so. I think because of how COVID like just unexpectedly took everything from us, and it was just things that we took for granted. Like, people would be like, oh, I'm only going to the winter NAMM, or forget the summer NAMM. And PASIC was just like, oh yeah, PASIC's for those drum guys over there,
Right.
But when we didn't have it, we realized how valuable those things are. So I think there'll be a greater appreciation for it. I know for me, the first time I went to PASIC, I was just in love with everything about it. It was like, these are my people. I am home, right? And so like every year that I haven't been able to go since then, I think the last time I went was 2018 or 2019. And every year, like I haven't been able to go. It's just kind of been like, I really need to get back. I really want to get back because, who doesn't want to talk about drums all day?
Right? It's like you talk about drums all day, you listen to drums all day, you try drums all day. It's the best. And then
Uh-oh.
and you're surrounded by, I think there's something to be said about all being together in this little microcosm, whereas NAMM is huge, right? NAMM has all the instruments, all the music, everything. It's amazing, and I love NAMM, but this is like a little, I always call it a family reunion, and it's getting bigger. Like the family's growing, more companies are coming, and more artists are performing, and the word is spread. And it's just, this year I think was the best year so far. And I think like a lot of people will be there next year who are going to be like wanting to experience what this year brought.
I always say like, by and large, obviously you always have like, a small group of the community that, might not necessarily feel the same way, but I really feel like drummers are some of the most community laden people that we have. Like, so, regardless of who you play for or, what your tax bracket is, the fact that you play drums is enough. And that's the thing I love about, PASIC, the after hour hangs, that St. Elmo's and Indy, or going to Nikki Blaine's, all of those things, or hanging out with I'm not going to say their names, John Freckles and Aaron Vistria at Steak and Shake at 3:00 in the morning, bringing up the sun, those things, it's such a great thing, and a lot of my lifelong friends, have come out of those hangs, so it's a really good thing. And it was really cool. I really wish I would have been there because my buddy Chris Hart got the Achievement Award this year, and it was like so well deserved. And I just wish I would have been there to kind of see him because he's always championing us, regardless of what we're doing. If you're part of the crown, like
Yes.
he always lets his affinity for us be shown. So I wish I would have been able to be there to, give him a little bit of that back. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you so much. I was honored to give Chris his award this year, and I got to
Wow.
make a little speech about him, and the part about it that really like made me choke up. And it's funny because there's a picture of us where he's like, he gets up on the stage to make his little speech, and you can see me in the background, and I'm like all teary about it. I'm like, but it kind of goes along with what we're just talking about. Like, I said, I talk a lot about this family environment that this drumming community has. It's a big family, and PAS really fosters that
Yeah,
family environment. But if that vibe could be wrapped up in one human being, it would be Chris Hart,
absolutely.
right?
At 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And for anyone listening who doesn't know, Chris is the head of artist relations at Remo. And, he's just one of the warmest, funniest individuals ever.
It's
And
bad dad jokes. Oh my God. Oh.
yes, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you one. It's really
Okay.
quick, it's really short, but this is a Chris Hart staple. So a friend of mine was walking down the street, and all of a sudden he gets hit in the head with a can of soda. But he's okay. Luckily, it was a soft drink. That's 100% Chris Hart.
It's so
A
good.
hundred percent. A
It's
hundred
so
percent.
Chris.
It's so Chris.
Q, I am one of the things that I cannot do ever is tell jokes. I'm the worst. I can't remember them. I can't tell them properly. It's just I just don't do it. Also, accents. I can't try to do accents or voices or any of that either. So
Right.
those two things are off the table completely. But Chris will tell a joke that I know he's told a million times ago, but that I know he's told a million times, but I cannot remember it. So I laugh every time. Like
And Chris has a way of um sucking you into the joke, and so you're
yes,
engulfed. Like, so you
yes,
don't necessarily know it's a joke at first until it makes that left turn, and you're like, I'm here now with Chris, and he'll be like, "You get it, Q? Q, did you get it?" Yes, Chris, I got it. A soft drink. Great, thank you.
yes,
But
soft drink.
then every time you see him, it's that awkward silence because you're waiting for him to give you the next one. So
Yes, it's so true. It's so true.
yes, Chris.
Anyone who's in his presence is just lucky to be there. That's how I feel about him.
Absolutely. I will tell you a quick story. This is before I even signed with Remo. It was after um, one of our colleagues had fallen. Marvin McQuitty had passed, and at NAM, Chris was at the head of putting together that tribute for him,
Yes, yes.
and at NAM, and I just remember, at the time was like, man, I want to be a part of a company that does that. Like, Marvin was no longer here on earth with us. He could no longer bring money into the company. He could no longer say anything about Remo. They had nothing to benefit by doing what they did for him, but the scholarship program that they started, that Mike Mitchell actually only won that year.
Yes.
Um, they flew his family in for it, and I just remember I had not met Chris yet, and I was like, wow, whoever that is, I want whatever company he's a part of, I want to be a part of that because that's family. And years later to be a part of the Remo family, and when he says it is not just an obliviation of accolades or anything like that. When he says it's a family like none other, it is a family like none other, and attitude reflects leadership, and that's because of how he is, and everything just kind of trickles down from that, and it's because
Mhm.
of his kind nature and his big heart that that the culture of Remo artist family is the way it is because of Chris. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will say too, all companies make great products. There are
Hmm.
you can find what you need from pretty much any company. Some
Agreed.
you might have to search a little harder to figure out what your sound is, right? But like
Right.
you can find what you need in any of these companies. But what sets one company apart from the next is really the people in it and
Absolutely.
the vibe that they create and the relationships that they foster. And so, you know, I think that's like, I always say it's all about the relationships, and it really is. It's just,
It really
that's
is.
what makes someone choose a brand over another. And I think for consumers, it's the same way, because if you're a consumer and you have all these choices laid out before you, but one feels like it's an environment that you want to be a part of, or it's a brand that you're buying into the vibe of the brand, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I cannot agree with you more. I just think that, you know, like you said, like all of these companies make amazing products, but after all of the tours are over, after all of the money is spent, after your career is over, you know, to be able to reach out to a Sarah and say, "Hey, I was just thinking about you today," you know, or "Hey, Chris, what cigar are you smoking on today?" And to
yeah.
get a genuine answer, you know, I tell guys all the time, I get DMs almost on the weekly, "Oh, you know, how I get an endorsement." And I was like, you know, we'll focus on the relationship,
Yes.
because at the end of the day, that's the thing that lasts. And if you go under a pretense of, okay, I'm just doing this for the gear, you're going to be miserable. Like, it is literally, and that's why I always, like, when I speak to you, when I speak to Chris, when I speak to all of these other amazing reps that I'm fortunate enough to work with, it's important that, you know, you guys are people and humans first. And I think sometimes we in this our environment, um, we look right past the human and go right for the title of the person. Oh, this person is the A&R of such and such, and they can get me into this door, or they can get me this gear. And I don't think that's what relations a part of artist relations is. Relations, it's like
Yes.
relating to a person and being human first, you know. So I that's a whole diatribe that I won't go there. That is a totally different thing. But you know, I have a passion for people. I have a heart for people, and sometimes it just kind of rubs me the wrong way to actually see, you know, people just disregard the human just to get what's in the person's hand, as
Right.
opposed to looking for their heart. So yeah.
Absolutely. And it never works out. You know, you might get something out of it, but at the end of the day, it's not a long-term relationship situation that you really would benefit from. So I always say the
Yeah.
same thing. When someone asks me that question, I always say the same thing. I say develop the relationships with those people. Show them that you love the product, that you're dedicated to promoting it in whatever you're doing. And for me, on the opposite side of it, Armin Zildjian, meeting him for the first time and my first interaction with him, I was really just a kid. I was like, 17 years old. But the way that he treated me in that moment, in that interaction, like I was so important to him and my opinions meant something to him. And that changed me and how I looked at other people, because I felt like, wow, he saw something in me that was important to him, and he made me feel important at the same time.
Right.
So
Right.
that was a good lesson to learn. And then
That's a gift. It's a
yeah,
gift. It's a gift.
it was. Yes, absolutely. Before I forget to mention too, one other person who kind of falls into this category, and I saw you post a picture with him, is Mitch from Audi Mute.
Yes.
And
Oh my God.
that
That guy's
man,
amazing. His energy is through the roof. Ah
yes.
man. I love Mitch. I got a chance to hang out with him when I was on the A2 Proud tour. We spent I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks in Cleveland, and just being able to, like, I have never experienced a business owner musically related that's so connected with everything in his community. Like where we went to eat breakfast, he's the one that did the the acoustical treatment in there. And then he was like, "Hey Q, I know you want to eat lunch, let's go over here." We went over there, and just just consistently in his community, just consistently, leading with his heart. And I was just blown away by that. Like Mitch is golden. Like he
He
is,
is. He's
and his energy is
amazing.
just crazy.
His energy is incredible. He created the studio for me in like a day and a half, basically. Like, and it was amazing. And of course, like I helped as much as I possibly could, but he's
Right.
just so incredible. Like you said, is his energy. He's got so much
Yeah.
energy. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy, and he's so creative and giving,
Yeah.
and he just,
Passionate. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yes. Yeah. That
Yeah, I
company is
don't know one
fantastic.
person. I don't know one person that's ever met Mitch and did not like him.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's a great guy.
he's so
Great
great.
guy. Yeah,
So I
I
wanted
can't wait to get back to Cleveland. So I'm hanging out with him the entire time. He'll get sick of me. I think
yeah,
I'm going to change my last name to Zlotnick for those 6 weeks.
you're just gonna be part of the family, right?
Yep, yep. And you going
That's
to the
so
house,
great.
eating dinner,
Yes,
hanging out at the factory. I'm gonna make something. I don't know what I'm gonna make, but I'm
you're gonna
making
make
something at the
something.
factory. Yep.
I fully believe this. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear about it. Um, but let's talk about you a bit. I want to hear more about you and kind of how you got your start, because I don't know too much about your start in drumming, music in general. I did hear about um a moment in your, like, a formative moment in your music when you first heard Toto's Africa, and that was from the Big Fat Five podcast. So
Oh my God.
I have to ask about that in particular, because Toto for me as a child, it came out, that album came out when I just a baby basically, but I was
Hmm.
obsessed,
Hmm.
obsessed. Which probably explains how I ended up where I ended up. But like,
Right.
but tell me about that experience of like discovering that music and like how you got your start.
Cool. So I've been playing drums since I was 3. Um, a story that's not unfamiliar. I started playing drums in church.
Mhm.
Um, but I grew up in a very strict and structured household. If it wasn't gospel music, it was not being played in the house. And every year, my parents used to take my sister and I, like right after the last day of school, pack up the car and we would go somewhere on vacation, family vacation every summer. And one year for my mom's birthday, my dad bought her a brand new car, and it was a 1985 Cutlass Salon. And back then in '85, um, every car that came out of Detroit, you got a courtesy tape, and on that courtesy tape, there was the most popular songs of that time, and
Right.
it was more like a thank you for purchasing our car. I think it went away, but I think when CDs were a thing, I think dealerships used to do the same thing with CDs.
Hmm.
And popped in the tape, and it was not gospel, and it was the first time I had heard something different. And I looked at my dad and my mom, and it was like, we can listen to it because we're on a road trip. And the first thing you hear are these drums. Go, go. And I didn't know what it was. There was no YouTube, there was no Google. All I knew that it said Toto by Africa. I
Yeah.
did not know who Jeff Porcaro was. I didn't know who Joe Porcaro was. I just knew that those drums spoke to me, and I listened to that song. I broke that tape. Like
Yeah.
I rewinded so much, I broke it. But there were other songs on that record, like "Try Again" by Champagne, "Birdland" by Jaco Pastorius. Like, so there were a lot of songs, but that Africa song just spoke to me. And yeah, so grew up. So that's the story about the Africa by Toto. But like I said, grew up, you know, basically born under a pew. Um, my grandfather was the pastor of the church that I went to. So like it was very small storefront oriented church, family oriented church. And it was just something I did, I didn't think it was anything special, I just played drums, I played
Hmm.
drums at church. and got into performing arts high school as a theater major. I was actually an actor, and they found out that I could play drums because there was a drum set in the cafeteria one day, and I sat down and played. The music teacher heard me and was like, "Oh, I didn't know you played drums." So then I started playing, you know, with the choir at the school, and then went to middle school, same thing. And when I got to high school, I was the lead in the school play, and I was also moonlighting as the jazz band drummer. And we were doing Treasure Island, and I was trying to do both. I was running to the drummer room to do my scenes, and then running from there to the band room to try to get practice in. And at 14, 15 years old, you think you have everything figured out. And the band director and the drama instructor was like, "Hey, you can't do both. Like, you have to choose." Then
Right.
in that moment, they were thinking more in micro, like, "Hey, you can't do this drama performance and this jazz band performance. You have to choose one." I'm
Hmm.
thinking they're saying you can't choose music. You have to choose music or music theater.
Hmm.
So because music was more popular, I had drumsticks in my back pocket. The girls seemed to like it, so I chose music and never looked back at music theater again until later on in my life. But started really honing in on music, really getting serious about drums, learning how to read, learning my theory, trying to learn as much as I possibly could. Ended up going to undergrad at the University of Miami. Did some minor terms at FIU, Florida International University, and my career just began to grow. You start meeting people, start building reputations, and I did as much as I could. But out of college, I started teaching. I taught high school math for like 5 years and was the assistant band director at a local high school, and decided in 2010 that I wanted to do music full time. So packed up all of my grip, moved to Atlanta. And Atlanta is one of those places where um, the same musicians that you see playing at a church are the same musicians that could be on stage, with Justin Bieber,
Right.
the
Yes.
next night, right? So Atlanta was one of those places. It was a melting pot of cultures. It was also a melting pot of talent. So I was the sub guy for everybody. The way I met Melly is I was subbing for Melly on a corporate band gig, and that turned into, "Hey man, um, our music director needs some help programming for the New Edition tour," and then that turned into that, and then it was, "Oh, I can't make this gig, and I heard you play drums. You want to do this Bobby Brown gig?" And
Hmm.
then that turned into Peabo Bryson, and that turned into Avery Sunshine, and that turned into Anthony David and Kenny Lattimore and Shantae Moore. The list goes on, but it was really organic of how everything kind of happened. And then 2016, I got a random call from a theater. A friend of mine, Brian Andrews, got a call to do this musical that he couldn't do, and they needed someone that could read. And I
Hmm.
got a call, and it was a musical that has Broadway aspirations. And I went in, and there were New York um, producers and New York music directors. So, like, just kind of being in that room, my love for the theater, music theater, ignited again. But this time, it was under the guise of being the drummer as opposed to being on top of the stage.
Hmm.
And from that time until this one, that's kind of been my career focus of doing more musical theater stuff, and that landed me, on Broadway, subbing on Ain't Too Proud, and then doing the tour, and now subsequently doing Hamilton now on the road.
So fantastic. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to try not to forget a few of the things I wanted to touch on in there because it's so amazing. And there are a few things that stood out. One that being a math teacher,
hmm
being a reader, a music reader, like you have to be
hmm
for all the things that you've done and
right,
being really proficient at that. It's so math oriented as well. And I always think about drumming and math in the same category. Like there's so
hmm
much correlation there. I'm a crazy math person. I love math. Like, would do math equations for fun. And I feel like there's something there, and there's that connection. So I love that you were the math teacher, and like, right, like it just fits. It fits.
It makes sense. A plus B will always equal C.
Right,
And a quarter note is a quarter note. And even when you change the rules, a quarter note is still a quarter note.
right,
So
right. And I always
yeah.
felt like math, like understanding math concepts helped me understand time signatures, time changes.
Hmm.
It helped me actually put things into a better or easier perspective for me to
Sure.
understand, to break things down. Like, okay, this time, but it's also, you can feel it like this. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
to me, that was always so all of the reading really lent itself to where you are now, because you have to be able to like read incredibly well to be doing the job that you're doing now.
Yes, yes, we can thank Andres Ferrero for putting this book together and giving me. I feel gray hair growing as I look through this book.
Yeah,
You know,
Andres is so great. And I mean, I love him as a human being, as a
yes,
player, just so incredible. But yeah, so he wrote this book that you're playing, and it's not
it's a
easy.
beast. It's a beast. I feel like if I had two more arms, I would still need one more arm. And I'm like, I'm looking at the first time I got the book. I'm like so before I got the book. Quick story about Andres. You're talking about people who lead with their heart and have passion. I was you're talking about investing in yourself. Like, so I had maybe like 2 or 3 days off, and I just had this, and I was like, I gotta be there. I gotta get into the city. I need to do something. So I took some Sky Miles, flew up to New York, went on hotels tonight, and it just so happens that Paramount Hotel, which is right across the street from the Richard Rodgers Theater, had rooms for like $65. It was crazy. So that's why I was staying for the weekend. And I was like, I want to go and see a show. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I just feel like I need to be here. So, luck would have it, Hamilton was still a very hot ticket. I got a rush ticket for like $60. Went and sat in
Wow.
the mezzanine. Had no idea who was playing drums. I just knew I loved the music. So I'm reading through the playbill like we used to do with liner notes back in the day. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, this guy's playing the show. I literally text him on direct message him. Find him on Instagram, direct message him. And was like, hey, man, we don't know each other. My name is Quinton Robinson. I'm a drummer. I'm sitting here in the mezzanine, and your drums sound absolutely amazing. He does not know me. We do not know each other. He does not. He did not follow me or anything like that. He says, "Oh man, thank you so much. Meet me at the stage door after the show."
Ah, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Um. So after the show, it's a crappy pizza place across the street. We went over there. We had pizza. Then we just started talking. He was like, when's the next time you're in New York? I was like, I'll be back next week. He was like, please accept my invitation to sit in the pit. And I know for a fact that he was getting at least 20 to 30 um, inquiries of sitting in that pit a week.
Mhm.
A week.
Mhm.
And he was like, Q, I want you to sit in my pit. I was like, and for me, I just loved the music so much, and I wanted to see how he did what he did. And I'm sitting there, and I was like, there's absolutely no way this guy is doing the things that he's doing.
Mhm.
And the innovation behind what he was doing to create the sound for this show. And so, fast forwarding, now being in a similar chair and having that book and reading the stuff that I have to do, like mallets with two hands while playing electronics and like triggering something else. I love that guy, but I'm gonna choke him when I see him because I feel gray hair growing as I even talk about this show. So
Oh my gosh, I know. Andres is he's just so fantastic. I feel like the first time I met him, there was just like a family connection there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're just
Mm-hmm.
family. And I
Mm-hmm.
talk about family a lot, but it's so true. It's
Yes.
so true. I love
Yeah.
him. Can't wait to see him, and I feel like it's just that's what we're all about. But yeah,
He
that's a
leads with
perfect
his heart,
example.
man.
Yeah.
He's another one that just he's so passionate. I'm enamored with individuals that when you talk about Chris Hart and you talk about Mitch, you can talk about Andres, these are all guys who lead with their heart, who have a passion for what they do, and that passion spills out on the other people. It's infectious. And they have definitely, impacted my life and made me want to be a better person because of how they are. But Andres, from a drumming perspective, specifically in the Broadway community, was one of the first people that kind of like just kind of reach his arms out. I always say that Broadway has a doorway, but there's no doorknob on the outside. Someone from the outside, from the inside, has to let you in. And guys like Andres, Dina Torriello, Clayton Craddock, Clint DeGannon, Damian Bassman, all of these guys have literally like welcomed me with open arms, and I know I'm forgetting so many but Andres was that first point of contact. And, it wasn't about how I sounded and how fast my 30-second note triplets could be at a
Mhm.
tempo of 235. When it was none of that. It was just he invested in me as a person. And for that, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah,
Seriously.
absolutely. And I mean, and congratulations on this gig too.
Thank
It's
you.
amazing. It's such an incredible show. One of my favorites ever. And um I'm just thinking like it must be cool for you to kind of like go back to something that you loved and you
Hmm.
chose to kind of like move away from for a while, but now the
Hmm.
musical theater thing is back in your life. And I'm guessing that your experience on stage helps you understand what's going on as you're drumming, as you're playing along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always tell people I'm just a actor on drums. I think the first podcast interview I did with Zach, we talked about that, like understanding the dynamics of a musical are different than the dynamics when we play on stage, and
Mhm.
understanding what it means to be under dialogue. It's not just playing softly. It's about
Right.
playing softly with intent. It's the emotion of the wind chimes. It's the emotion of the cymbal swell. Understanding what it means to lead an actor without pushing them or pulling them. You know, um, all of those things. And being able to put myself in that position simply because I can be like, okay, if I was on stage, what would I want from a drummer right here?
Mhm.
What would help me out in this moment, and being able to even with choreography, understanding what's important, like putting the ego aside. Yeah, that feel that I worked for 3 weeks on to get perfect sounds great, but does it really serve the purpose that the actors need on stage? It's really a service position.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things I love about music theater, as being the hidden smaller cog in a bigger wheel. No one sees my face, but they feel everything that I'm doing. And every decision that I make on the drums affects someone in a different way. And I think that's one of the romantic things about drumming in a pit. And let's be real, as musicians, to be able to do what we do at a high level, there has to be some level of narcissism. But like, I don't mind not being seen. Like, I rather be felt, I rather be heard, and music theater gives me that opportunity. And if I can help, tell a story percussively for and build a foundation for the people that are seen on stage to be able to do that, you know that's what I would want as an actor. So like, I'm an
Right.
actor on drums. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so fantastic.
Thank you.
And one of the other things, like you mentioned, two mallets in one hand and doing electronics and everything. That's The electronics. I know.
Sarah!
I'm imagining this, but the electronics part of what you do, of what you have created for your career, and embracing, Ableton and becoming like well known for your work there, and the ability to be a musical director and understand all of those things. That's fascinating to me. That's one thing. Like I love electronics. I love technology, but it's not my forte for sure. And so like when I meet someone like you, or I hear about how great you are at that, and that, people call you for that, it's such a great and in demand skill.
I wish I could say that it was from this grand epiphany that I had, I'm going to do this thing, but it really came out of a need. Um, so culturally in church, particularly the Black church experience, most of the time your drummers are responsible for creating loops, like whether it be on an MPC or, whatever the latest drum machine is. But I can remember, one of the first opportunities I had, um, the artist needed to run stems, and
Mhm.
I really wanted the gig. I really wanted that job, and no one in the band knew how to do it. And I was like, I'll do it. In my head, it was like, how hard could it be? I already do drum machine stuff. Like, let me figure it out. Because I felt like if no one took the onus or the responsibility to do it in this particular construct of band, they would have got rid of all of us and would have hired someone else.
Sure.
And I wanted to do that gig. So, I locked myself in a hotel for 3 days and took my Roland VS 1680, like old school, and
Yes.
my MPC. I had a PC. I didn't have a Mac computer yet. And I took all of these stems and put them in the freeware. You remember Audacity?
I
Like the
do.
free. So that was my first beginning of programming. I took all of those stems, put them in Audacity, lined them up, and in real time, one by one, recorded them into the VS 1680 to be able to play them live.
Wow.
Retroactively put a click in there because there was no click with the songs, and um, it just kind of went from there. And then I realized after having success with there, I was like, there has to be an easier way to do this. There has
Mhm.
to be an easier way to get this done. And that's when it actually I started going down the rabbit hole of Ableton, um, started going down the rabbit hole of Pro Tools and understanding their variances and the things that each one of them do well. And I'm at home with it simply because um, it allows me, from a drumming perspective, kind of feel like being a programmer allows me to see the music in a more global view as opposed to a direct drum view. Like, obviously the vehicle that I'm using is playing drums, but having the aerial view of the total construct of the music allows me to, kind of be a bit more musical and to be a bit more effective in certain ways that maybe drummers might not necessarily do because they might not hear it the same way.
Right.
Um, so with this musical, it encompasses all of that. You know, Although I thank God I'm not running Ableton because I don't have the brain power to be able to play this book and do
Oh,
Ableton at the same time. Our percussionist Katie does an incredible job, and as difficult and as demanding as the drum book is. When we see each other in Boston, I'm going to introduce you to Katie. You have to see what she does in this show.
I can't
She
wait.
is the central nervous system of our show. She's running all of the click tracks. She's running Ableton. She is also playing keys on some songs. She's playing vibraphones, just doing everything percussive, all
Wow.
things percussion. And anything that you think is a loop is not a loop. It's actually her playing real time. So Hamilton is actually comprised of two drummers playing at the same time. She's just on the electric stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she
Amazing.
has a kick drum, electric kick drum. She has her pad, and we're literally playing together the entire time. And
Wow.
this show pulls at every part of, unbeknownst to me, what I had been creating as far as the electric component or being the hybrid drummer. Being able to live in the electric world and the acoustic world and bring those things together.
Right. That's
So
amazing. Well, I can't wait to see the show. I can't wait to meet Katie. Yeah, that sounds
she's
amazing.
a force. She's a force.
Yes,
You're gonna
I
love
bet.
Katie. Katie is amazing. Yeah.
It's awesome. Go get some terrible pizza across the street.
See, terrible pizza. Can we find terrible pizza in Boston? I kind of feel
I
like
don't
every time
know.
I eat there, I have really good food there.
Yeah, we'll have some really, really good food in Boston. That'll be the plan.
Amazing.
But you said something I just want to touch on too. I don't want to forget about this, but you learned how to do that out of necessity,
Hmm.
and you didn't know how, but you said, yes, I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to figure it out. And you did. And I'm sure it was hard, and I'm sure there were very frustrating moments. But I think that's an important lesson because we all have things that are difficult to us, whether it's maybe reading or reading music or the electronic side of things, or getting ourselves out there, putting ourselves out there for different things. But like that's an important thing, like to do that thing that's hard. Um
Hmm.
and you nailed it. You got there. So that's so
Thank
great.
you. Well, I have a friend. His name is Kipper Jones. He's a songwriter. He wrote a bunch of songs for a bunch of different people. More notably, he wrote "I Want to Be Down for Brandy," and which just I think 25-year anniversary and over however many millions of albums sold.
Hmm.
Um, he told me one time we were getting ready to do a gig, and he was like, "You got to say yes and figure it out." You
Yes.
know, there's never a perfect, you're never going to have enough money. You're never going to have enough resources. You're never going to have enough ability to start. And
Yeah.
you just have to say yes and figure it out,
Yes. Yeah, that is
because,
so true.
yeah, I think, I mean, for me, that's just something I live by. It's always impossible until someone does it. I can't tell you how many times I was laughed at or you know picked on because I wanted to do this thing. Oh, what, you gonna move to New York? Who knows you up there?
Mhm.
Man, do you know who's playing that show? You're never gonna be like, I heard all of the naysayers, but sometimes those whispers of doubt, not only from other people but from yourself, you have to hear that positive voice, louder than those other ones,
Mhm.
because I saw something on Instagram the other day. It said you don't have to be amazing to start, but you have to start to be amazing.
Mhm.
And by no means am I calling myself amazing, but what I do realize is you can always find a reason not to do something. You can
Yes.
always find a reason, and a lot of times we use a geography or resources as a reason why not. And honestly, the crux of it comes down to us being fearful,
Yes.
and we can't operate in that fear. Some of your good friends and some colleagues of mine, it all started with a yes. And it wasn't someone giving them a yes, it was giving themselves permission to go out there and be the best that they can be. And I'm hoping that someone will see what I'm doing and see my story and be able to identify with something that I've done or said, and it pulls them into their own yes, whether it be in business or whether it be opening up a practice or being a drummer or
Mhm.
starting a very successful podcast. you
Yeah.
know um I just want people to be able to hear my story and say, you know what, if Q can do it, he came from an obscure beginning and look where he ended up, I can do it too. So
Mhm.
that's important to me. So this is not about, like, even when I post things, it's not about, hey, look at me. It's about, hey, if I did this, so can you. It's nothing
Absolutely.
special about me that has me sitting here, but my giving myself permission to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
to be an example and to be an inspiration for other
mhm.
people. I think that's like when that's your when that's your goal, it's you're going to do it. You just are, and I
Yeah.
agree with you. The hardest thing to do is start.
Yeah.
To make that decision to do something that's uncomfortable or scary or new. But I say the same thing. Like you have to jump in. You have to be willing to jump in because there are, thousands and thousands of people who aren't willing to jump in. So just do
Sure.
it. Be that person. And then show others because it's important to be the face of possibilities, I guess.
Yeah.
And you are that. So,
Thank
you're
you.
doing so great. And then, the other thing too is it's a perfect example of the relationships mattering because I would never have started this podcast without friends who kind of not only gave me encouragement but advice about what mic to use and what platform to go on and how
Right.
how to do it. And then Mitch coming and putting the studio together for me. Things like that, those people in your life that you've fostered those close relationships with and you can go to for advice, pick up the phone and
Hmm.
ask someone. And that's one thing that I would say for anyone out there listening who's thinking about getting into something that's new for them, like reach out to people who are doing what you want to do and be be willing to listen and take the
Yes.
advice and like you Instagramming Andres from the mezzanine at the show and he says, hey, come meet me at the stage door. And not everyone is as great as Andres, but still,
Right.
even those people that just give you a little hint of advice or a little snippet of insight, it's worth it. It's worth it to put yourself
Absolutely.
out
Hmm.
there.
You said something um about putting yourself out there, and I think um it, it's not easy, and us being musicians, our art is very personal.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's easy for us to just hold on to it because we know how we're going to take care of it. And the hardest thing sometimes is putting our art out there, you know, for other people to see. And it might not necessarily be received, you know, the way we want it to be received. And then, we take it to heart. But the thing about it is, like, I think I took a bunch of psychology classes in college, and like the human brain is just predisposed to negative thinking. I think we always just kind of feel like the worst thing can always happen. Think about when you were first starting to ride a bike, or the
Hmm.
first time you got on an airplane, or you're driving a car. The worst thing in our minds is we're going to fall, we're going to crash, the plane is going to fall out of the sky, right?
Yes.
You know, um, but more times than not, those things don't necessarily actually happen, you
Right.
know. So a lot of times, the fear that we have is built up in our minds based on this thing that we hold so close to us, and we don't want to, like, yes, there are people that I have reached out to, and they have absolutely been their response have been less than desirable, right? Or
Yes.
you're met with a level of indifference, but you can't let a no stop you. You can't let one negative or bad interaction stop you. If you know that this is something you want to do, don't be don't be overbearing, don't be a jerk, but be tenacious,
Yeah.
Um, and people will see that if you're authentic and you're genuine and you're coming in with no ulterior motives.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, people may come in, oh man, I love your stuff, and really what they want is for you to get them a snare drum, or you to hook them up with a cymbal deal or whatever. um,
Right.
but if it's something that you want to do, identify those people that are doing it well, and use those individuals, like you said. And I think that's such a big part of it, because no one gets to where they are in their career alone.
No.
And I definitely don't want to ever make it seem like, oh, I'm the self-made man. No, there are hundreds of people that have helped me along the way, whether it's been a pat on the back when I needed it, or hey man, just keep doing what you're doing, or even the person that told me, hey man, you suck, you
Yeah.
know you
Yeah.
know using all of that to help propel you to the next level and not allow it to make you stagnant.
Hmm.
So I think that's a great point, Sarah. Like, you just have to get out there and bet on yourself and put yourself out there.
Yes. Yeah. Bet on yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, what do you have but that you have you, and everyone is so incredibly unique. And I think about art and music in that way, where you have, it's almost like your baby that you don't
Hmm.
want to like hand off to anyone else to hold, because you're like, that's my baby and I know
Yeah.
how to take care of it. Right. And like,
Yeah.
so I think about that with music and art, but there's something incredible about letting someone else experience that beauty that you've
Hmm.
created, and
Hmm.
knowing that their interpretation of it might not be what you intended, but it might even be better.
Hmm.
Right? Like you
Yep.
might affect someone with your music or your art in a way that changes them or changes their life or their perspective on something. So you have to kind of take that opportunity with the chance that someone's really not going to get it either. And
Yeah.
that's okay. And that's okay. I
Hmm.
think about my brother, who's a painter,
Hmm.
and he went to art school, and he had this installation for his graduation. And it was this really incredibly beautiful, colorful, kind of like paint dripping concept. And I
Mm.
was just like fascinated. I'm going like, this is really, really beautiful. And the way that the colors kind of work together, and the way that he
Hmm.
used kind of like bright colors, but some parts of it were muted. The way that it was dripping, like I just, to me, it spoke to me. And
Hmm.
I remember him saying something like, well, I think mom and dad are probably like, I paid for art school for my son to like have this like dripping paint thing. But in that moment, I thought to myself, not everyone has to get it. It doesn't have to
Right.
mean something or the same thing to everybody. And I think about that with music too. And I know it's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there like that. It's hard for me to put myself out there a lot too. You're like, what if people don't like me? What if they don't
Right.
like my face or what, whatever? Like you think about stuff like that.
Right.
Because you get weird random comments from people. I remember a Zildjian video where someone said, "Oh, I hate her eyebrows," and I'm like, okay.
Wow.
but it's
You
but it's
know,
you know it's one of those things where you have to accept that there are a certain percent of people that aren't going to appreciate who you are, what you have, what you're giving, what you're doing. But that's okay, because for whatever percentage of the people who get it or are moved by it or affected by it, or even have like life-changing moments like you were describing, it's important to just do it, to just be that,
that's who
take
it
the
was meant
risk,
for.
right?
That's who it was meant for. If it hits one person and changes their life, or it hits 100 million people and changes their life, it was meant for those people. I really believe that our art is a deeper connection to a higher power, and that's why it's so unique. Like, each one of our gifts are so unique, and if if we just hold it, like, it's not serving the purpose. Like, it's like that security blanket, but our art is out there. That's the reason why we're artists. That's the reason
Yes.
why your brother paints. That's the reason why we are musicians, because that art is supposed to tap into a higher power, and what's supposed to heal people and inspire people and make people think about things differently.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times, because it does all of those things for us, we don't want to let it go. But I kind of feel like the next dispensation of, once we empty ourselves, when we refill, it's even the more, because whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever, when we replenish that, it becomes even more bountiful, simply because the universe now understands, God now understands that he can trust us with disseminating that. I think about, honestly, I think about Aaron Spears, and when I was just talking about that, of how he is when he plays,
Mhm.
and his specific gift when he plays drums is different when I hear an Andres play, or
Mhm.
it's different when I hear a Dave Weckl play. And although they're all playing drums, they are all speaking to me differently. and to that point, the more they pull out, the next time I hear them, it's even more incredible because they've poured out onto other people.
Right.
But yeah, like I just kind of feel like we have to give ourselves so much permission, and you know, you know, is let me say this. I know it may seem easy for me to say that now, sitting in the position that I'm sitting in now, but to someone that is listening, that is just thinking about starting, I know that it's not easy. I
Yes.
get that it's not easy. However, that thing that's tugging at you to be, that thing that is tugging at you, that that there's a greater, deeper purpose for your music than what it is now, or your business or whatever, it's there for a reason. Yeah, it is there for a reason, and it's not always easy, but you can't grow in comfort. You have to move into the uncomfortable to be able to get that. So
Yeah.
I'm off of my soapbox. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't
No,
mean to
it's
turn this
great.
into a motivational speaking session, but I that's just where I am, and
Yes.
I'm only here because of that, you know?
Yes.
And so yeah.
Absolutely. It's so important. Don't apologize whatsoever. It's really, really important. And I get on the soapbox about it too. But I also want to encourage people to just go after what they're passionate about because
Yes.
because you know, I have had many struggles. It's not easy, but it's worth it,
Hmm.
right? At the end of the day, I'm happy and
Yes.
that's worth it, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
So
And
let's
let me
spread
say
that.
publicly, you're doing an incredible job. I feel like I've been watching this thing you've been doing from the very beginning, and think you're doing an amazing job. I can't wait to see what happens with it. Um, and yeah, so I don't know who that person was with the eyebrow thing, but if I ever see him, I'm gonna snap him. I'm gonna slap him.
You
But
know, I
we were talking about you were talking about the Zildjian video, and talking about um being preconceived to negative disposition or whatever, our minds. You could put a video up and you can get 100 likes, and then it's the one thumbs down that you over obsess over.
sure,
You could
yes.
have like all of these millions of comments that are just complimentary, and that one person that would be like, it was okay, and
Right.
you fixate on that.
You do, and you
And
wanna know why. Why didn't they
yeah.
like it? What happened, right? I
Hmm.
know, and there's some I don't know if it's, like, growing up or with time or age or whatever it is, but, like, there's something that comes from that growth that lets you let that go. Like,
Hmm.
you know, I understand that whoever made that eyebrow comment, right? You know, they were having a bad day or they're not happy.
Or
They're,
they
you
just could
know,
have been a jerk, Sarah. Like, you're
they
letting them
could
off
have
the
been a
hook.
jerk,
They could have
right?
just been a jerk.
Right. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's really not even my business to worry about that.
Hmm.
So I kind of just let it go. And that
Yeah.
also that mindset also helps with those voices that you were talking about earlier, where you're like, okay,
Hmm.
I have, all this, okay, Sarah, you can do it. You're gonna do this and this is gonna be great. And then you have that voice who's like, oh, this isn't gonna be good, or you're gonna trip
Hmm.
and fall when you go out on the stage. I think about that all the time. Like,
Hmm.
what if I just trip and fall, like that kind of thing. But you are able, I think, with time and experience to just kind of like quiet that negativity
Yeah.
and be more peaceful about things, and then realize also, like, if you did trip and fall on stage, that it happened, and it was a moment in time, and yes, everything's captured for eternity now on a million iPhones, but it was a moment, and people get over things, and also people have a terribly short attention span nowadays, so it goes away.
Yeah.
um so take the risk. I just say take the risk, do it, do the hard things, do the things that make you uncomfortable, and at the end of the day, you'll be better for it, and you'll
Absolutely.
find what makes you happy.
Yes. Agreed. We're in lockstep with that. I believe that wholeheartedly. when my time on this earth is over, I don't want to leave anything in me. I want everything, every potential, all of the potential that I have to have been tapped into. You
Mhm.
know, I just think that that's important. It's the way to live life to the fullest. I don't know. I don't know when this shift happened. I wish I knew the counterpoint, like, of when I got to this epiphany of, say yes and figure it out.
Right.
But I wish I knew when it was, but I can't. I don't know when it was. I think it was just an evolution of life, and the yeses and the nos and the disappointments, and the great stuff. And like you said, as you get older, life has a way of shaping you into what you were meant to be, but we
Mhm.
just have to be open to it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for all of the great insight and, advice too, because I think this is all really important. And I can't wait to see you in Boston. It's just a few months away, so it's
And
gonna be
can't
great.
wait. By that time, the gray hair would have stopped growing, and I will have this book under my fingertips, and I'll stop cursing Andres's name every time I
Right.
get to one of those songs that I won't say which one. Um,
That's
but
awesome. I can't wait.
But I would like to say, we were talking before we started. We were talking about people, examples, and leading with the heart. And I just have to give out a shout to my man Melvin Baldwin, who has been a light on and off the stage. That's I call him Big Unc. That's my uncle.
Aw.
He's just, outside of playing, the wrong drum heads, and the sticks that he uses, uh, outside of all of that,
Yeah.
he is an amazing individual, and I just want to take this time to publicly thank him for the seen and unseen example that he set, on the stage and off. So, love you, Melly.
Absolutely. Yes, we love you, Melly. Hope to see you soon again too. But thank you for saying that too. I think it's important to recognize those people in our lives, and
Absolutely,
Melly's great.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
all right, Q. It was awesome catching up with you. Thank you so much today, and we will see each other in person in a couple months.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Um, I, I love everything you're doing, and if there's any way that I can support, however, let me know, and we'll try to get it done.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. And it's that kind of relationship that's important, right?
Right there.
Always. Okay.
All
You take care. I'll see you
right,
soon.
all right, bye bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.